All right, 10 games are in the books for the 2024 college football season, and the preseason elite quarterback list has evolved somewhat. Some quarterbacks have risen, some have stayed the same, and some have dropped. As the great movie Friday Night Lights so eloquently put it, the Texas high school state football playoffs is the thinning of the herd, and that's exactly what's gone on in college football this season with the quarterback list. So in today's short show, I'm going to give you my take on where I see the college QBs after 10 games. And at the end of the show, I'm going to give you my picks for the 4 Heisman Trophy finalists, and also a little bit of a preview of what's coming up on podcasts for the rest of the football season. This is QB Unfiltered, my take, the quarterback thinning of the herd.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you want to play tough and want to hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
All right, before the season started, I did individual shows and podcasts on who I thought were the top quarterbacks coming into this season. And I did shows on the following guys: Cam Ward from the University of Miami, Carson Beck from Georgia, Brady Cook from the University of Missouri, Drew Allar from Penn State, Dylan Gabriel from Oregon, Jalen Milroe from Alabama, Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, Shedeur Sanders, Colorado, Quinn Ewers from Texas, Cam Rising from Utah, and Noah Fafita from the University of Arizona. Now, those are just the quarterbacks that I highlighted, and there are obviously some other really good quarterbacks throughout the country, guys like Will Howard from Ohio State, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, and Kyle McCord from Syracuse. These are just the guys that I chose to highlight in podcasts, and those are really going to be the guys that I talk about with my thinning of the herd today. Okay, and the thinning of the quarterback herd is a result of a number of factors, in my opinion, and this is what I use to gauge this show on today. Injury. All right, there are quarterbacks on this list that have definitely been affected this year with injuries. Offensive line play. Your offensive line has a huge role in how your quarterback plays. And so whether you've got an offensive line that can pass protect or you've got an offensive line that struggles, but that's definitely in the mix. Receivers. Now, you've got to have a great receiver room. Obviously, you got to have guys that can get open and catch the rock consistently. There are quarterbacks on this list that have really highly rated receiver rooms, and there are other quarterbacks whose receiver rooms weren't as strong or just haven't produced this year. Then you've got exposed flaws in their game. Next is performances in big games and performances against great competition. And that's really what separates the great quarterbacks from the good quarterbacks. Then you've got the level of execution of the offense. You know, this is huge, obviously, and it's pretty obvious to me that when you're watching a quarterback who's got command of the offensive scheme and, more importantly, executes the offense on the snap of the ball, that's going to determine a lot about the success of their individual offenses for each team. And it's also one of the factors in moving QBs up, keeping them the same, or dropping them down. Then you have consistency. Are they consistent? You know, you play, a 12-game schedule, and week in and week out, versus below average teams, good teams, and great teams. Your quarterback always has to play the same. And the great quarterbacks play at that level up there. And then you've got coaching changes. You know, some of these QBs either had a change in head coach, and when that happens, you also have a change with offensive coordinator. You've got other quarterbacks that kept the same head coach, but changed the OC. So anytime that you got a coaching change, which changes not only the scheme that you're running offensively, but it could be your quarterback coach. And if you don't think that a good quarterback coach, a great quarterback coach, has an effect on quarterbacks, you're nuts. I have said this forever. The most important position on any football team at any level is the quarterback, and it's the least coached. So there's going to be some guys that came into this season as elite guys that maybe just aren't getting coached as well as they should. And it's really amazing to watch a quarterback who plays good but never gets over the hump, and you have a change of quarterback coach the next year, he takes off. And so that's really, really important. Okay, I've broken this show down now and these lists into 3 categories. And those are quarterbacks that have stayed at the elite level. And again, we're talking about what was projected for these guys in the preseason. So category 1, QBs that have stayed at that elite level or even raised their game. Then you've got level number 2 or category number 2, and that's QBs that have stayed status quo. They didn't rise and they didn't fall. They basically just stayed the same. And then you have the third category, QBs that have dropped from the elite level. Okay, let's start with category number 3, QBs that have dropped from the elite level. And again, this is my opinion. You know, I said this is going to be a short show today, so I'm not going to get into a lot of the specifics with these individual QBs, but this is based on their team's performance, their performance statistically, their performance consistently, their performance mechanically, their performance decision-making wise. So these are guys that I think have dropped. And that is Noah Fafita at the University of Arizona. He was a pretty dynamic guy last year. And in the show that I did on him earlier this year, I called him a scrapper. Really, really scrappy. He's not the, when you say the perfect quarterback, his picture is not in the dictionary under perfect quarterbacks, but he's a guy that got it done and made things happen. For whatever reason, I know that the coaching staff changed, and that's a big one. As we said earlier with the coaches, his game, he just has not been as impressive as he was last season. Then you have Cam Rising. This one's a sad one to me. I really thought that he was going to have a big year, but I also said that a lot of it depended on how he was going to come back from that knee injury. And you've got some things working against him, which are pretty obvious, and it's worked out that way. And the fact that he's older, he's been in college football, it seems like forever, and he's gotten the shit beat out of him. He's banged up, and it's hurt his game. And this year has been a very frustrating season for him. But injuries definitely took their toll on him. And that's really sad to me because I really enjoyed watching him play. Okay, then you've got Brady Cook from Mizzou, who was a guy for me that I think he's going to be pretty good. I'm not totally sure. And he just, he's another guy that's battled injuries, but he really hasn't broken out this year and improved his game or his performance on the field. Now I'm going to give you 2 guys that are going to raise some eyebrows. The first one, and this is quarterbacks that have dropped from the elite level. University of Georgia quarterback Carson Beck. Carson Beck, and this is my thoughts on him this year, besides the fact that his touchdown pass numbers have dropped, he has thrown way too many interceptions. But the thing that has concerned me about him is when I watched him like against the University of Alabama and I watched him against Texas, his body language on the field is not good. It's like he has lost his confidence, and that has a huge effect on quarterbacks' performance. It also has a huge effect on their teammates. And I just don't think that he has the swagger that he had last year, right, in 2023, and his performance this year has dropped. Now, Georgia, their defense is unbelievable, and that's what's going to win games for them. they can't jump on Carson Beck's back and say, win a game for us offensively, I don't think. And then the last quarterback who has dropped from the elite level, in my opinion, is Alabama's Jalen Milroe. Now, coming into the season, you got guys like Mel Kiper, that quarterback guru, and some of these other guys that had Milroe like up there as the number 4 guy, the number 4 quarterback. And that's just not the case. He's a running back playing quarterback. He's a hell of an athlete. I think in the NFL, he's either going to be playing safety or he's going to be playing running back. But his passing skills, throwing the football, are not what they need to be a consistently great quarterback. Now, he'll kill you running the ball, which he just proved this last game. But consistently being a dominant passer, he's not going to do that. I did a show on him earlier this year where I said he is scary. He's scary because he is just good enough as a passer to hurt defenses, particularly when Alabama gets man-to-man matchups and he can throw isolation routes. He throws a really good deep ball. But the intermediate to short game, he has problems with, and just being consistently accurate. But man, he puts defensive coordinators in a huge bind, because if he pulls the ball and runs, or Alabama calls a called run play for him, QB power or whatever, he can hurt a defense fast. He's their best running back. Okay, now we move to the second category, and these are guys, in my opinion, that have stayed status quo. All right. They've kind of just stayed in the same spot. Now, the first one is Penn State's Drew Allar. He has probably improved a little bit, but not enough to move him to the elite category. All right. Not nearly enough to do that. I thought that coming into the season that he had some deficiencies in his game. And while Penn State's winning a whole bunch of games and he's put up good numbers, he just hasn't taken that step forward to be in the elite QBs. He's basically stayed the same. And then we've got, and this one hurts me, Quinn Ewers from Texas. A couple of weeks ago, I did a show on him where I said there's one of two things going on with him. And this was based on his performance in the 2 games coming back off of that abdominal strain, or that oblique strain injury, where he played against Oklahoma and then Georgia. I said there's one of 2 things going on with him. He has either lost his confidence. I called it at the time. He's got the yips like a golfer does, where it affects you mentally. It was like every time he threw a ball, he was like aiming it and pushing the ball and trying to be too careful. And he just wasn't confident in cutting that thing loose and zipping it and throwing it with confidence, which leads me to the other one. I said, it's either confidence or he's still hurt with that abdominal strain, the oblique strain. With your core, when you throw the ball as a quarterback, that rotation of your trunk and releasing that ball, that puts a lot of torque on the midsection. And if you're a little tender there, that's going to cause you to throw soft footballs. And that's exactly what he did. Now, the last couple of games, he's bounced back. This last game, he tossed 5 touchdown passes. So I think he got healthy. And that's what the problem was, coming back off that injury. Obviously, Texas is right there, one of the top 4 teams, 4 number 1 seeds going into the playoffs. But because of that injury and because of 4 or 5 game span where he either didn't play or didn't play very well, in my opinion, I've had him on the QBs that I thought were going to go up that have kind of stayed status quo. And then the third one is, and I'm going to put an asterisk next to this guy's name because I've got him in 2 categories. And that is Colorado's Shedeur Sanders on staying where he is. So on one hand, he's been good. He's been solid. Obviously, Colorado's having a really good year. And he's a big part of that. I think that they shored up their offensive line with their protections, and they're keeping him on his feet a little bit more than they did last year. But, he's having a good season. I just don't see him having that elite status. Now, everybody's talking about the fact that he's going to be one of the first quarterbacks taken in the draft, and that may be. I mean, I've got some questions about him. I'm going to put him right now in that number 2 category, that he stayed status quo. All right. And then finally, the number 1 category I had, and that is the list of the QBs that have stayed at that elite level or even elevated their game. And I'm going to start with the guy that I just talked about, and that's Shedeur Sanders with the asterisks. He's in 2 different categories: staying status quo and elevating his game to the next level. And the reason why I've got him on this list is because either I haven't seen it and I haven't noticed it, or it's not being reported, or he's just not doing it. But this season, Shedeur Sanders hasn't done nearly as much stupid shit as he did last year. Okay. Some of the obnoxious stuff that he did that didn't have anything to do with his execution when the ball was snapped. It seems like this year he's kind of just put that on the shelf. Maybe it's a year of maturity. I hope so. But it's like he's gone out this year and finally just played. All right. And that makes a big difference with a quarterback's performance. I'm going to put Sanders in this category with an asterisk. Okay, now the next guy that I think has stayed at elite or increased his game, and that's Ole Miss Jackson Dart. Now, going into this season, I said Jackson Dart was going to be a Heisman finalist because he's playing in an offensive scheme by Lane Kiffin, where he's going to throw the ball all over the yard and also be involved in the run game. And he can hurt defenses with his legs. Ole Miss is number 2 in the country in offense behind Miami. And Jackson Dart has had some great games. He's been banged up a little bit too, but he plays against great competition, and he's got Ole Miss sitting, pretty good right now. Pretty good. They got to win football games here at the end of the season, but he's one of the top quarterbacks in the country right now. 2 guys. We're going to start with Dillon Gabriel from the University of Oregon. The Ducks are the number 1 team in the country. I said in my show before the season started, based on what he did at Oklahoma, that he was going to be an absolute superstar for Oregon because of his skill, his mechanics, and also the scheme that they're running there offensively is perfect for him. I think that Dillon Gabriel is the mechanically best quarterback in college football. Mechanically. So we're talking about feet, his drop, his balance, weight distribution, no wasted motion, pushing that ball up, getting it out on time, opening his hips and shoulders when he throws the ball to his target. His accuracy is really good. He makes smart decisions on the field. He throws really catchable footballs. I just think that with any quarterback, physically, it starts and ends with your feet. And Dillon Gabriel's got the best feet of any college quarterback in terms of the passing game. And he has come into the season as an elite quarterback, and he has, I think, raised his game a little bit. Obviously raised the Ducks, and he's one of the top quarterbacks in the game. And then the last guy is the guy that I called the best quarterback in college football before spring ball started, and that's Miami's Cam Ward. It was obvious to me that when he played at Washington State that he was on a different level, and I knew that because he had played in the air raid at Incarnate Word, where he played first out of high school, and then he played in the air raid at Washington State, and then he was coming to play in the air raid at Miami, that he was going to, really take off and excel. He is must-see TV every Saturday. And they stumbled a little bit against Georgia Tech this last week for their first loss, but he has put up huge numbers and has got a bright future ahead of him in the NFL. So I said that Cam Ward was the best quarterback in college football about 6 months ago. Dylan Gabriel is just a tick behind him. Cam Ward is the total package. All right. Just a total quarterback package. Dylan Gabriel is the best mechanically sound quarterback. Those two guys are the top two guys for me. Okay, so this is where I think these guys stand as of right now. We are getting ready to go into the final stretch of the season and then the playoffs, so it should be exciting. Hopefully all these guys stay healthy so that they can show what they can do. Now, finally, this is my prediction for the Heisman Trophy finalists. These are the four guys I think we're going to see in New York City in early December. Quarterback Cam Ward from Miami, quarterback Dylan Gabriel from Oregon, running back Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. The guy's unbelievable. And wide receiver / DB Travis Hunter from Colorado, who's doing amazing things. Anytime you can play both ways and excel like he does, that's really something. Now, I've also got a dark horse if they've got 5 guys that they invite to the ceremony, or if something happens to one of those other 4 guys, my dark horse is Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. Okay, and then finally, I am going to start incorporating a little bit of whiteboard work in some of my podcasts to where I can get on the board and actually chalk up some X's and O's with offensive schemes and passing schemes that sort of explain to you guys what I'm talking about when I'm talking about these quarterbacks and these teams and showing video clips. I can get on the whiteboard then and chalk it up so it'll make more sense to you guys. And then I'm also going to do some just straight up standalone. I'm going to call them chalk casts, where it's just me and a whiteboard and we do some X's and O's. And in fact, the first chalk cast that I'm going to do, the first official chalk cast, is going to be my tribute to the iconic football gurus Mina Kimes and Mel Kiper. We're going to talk about that pesky cover 2 defense that is shutting down all the NFL quarterbacks and passing games. So we're going to talk a little bit about cover 2 and how you beat it and how offensive coordinators have been absolutely carving it up for the last 30 years or more. Okay, as always, if you like the content that I'm putting out there, you like getting my take and my insight on offensive play, the passing game, and playing the absolute hardest position to play in all sports, the quarterback position, then subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all the support. Drop me a comment on today's quick little show and let me know what you think of my selections, my picks for those 3 categories. Be interested to read some of those comments. And this is QB Unfiltered. And remember, always throw the ball short to guys who can score. See ya.
I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.